very far from me. There's an advantage of focusing on God as very far and creating a love from that. So we are toward the end of chapter 44, 8 lines, 7.5 lines from the top, and we're at the final point of the chapter. So what we discussed at length last week was, where does this love bring me to? Where does the love ascend to? And therefore, where do my actions done from this love, my Torah, my good deeds, my commandments, my mitzvahs, where do they go to? And we explained there's 4 spiritual worlds higher than our own. And generally, if one is serving with a love, an emotion-oriented love, then the love and what you do because of the love ascends to the 2 lower worlds, which are both emotionally oriented. But if what you're doing is coming from an intellect that's really creating the love, it goes even higher to the 3rd world, counting from the bottom, the world of intellect bria, both the love and what you do because of the love, the Torah and the mitzvahs. And then there's even ascending to the highest world of Atzilos. And we learned last week that even though the loves we're discussing in this chapter are inherited loves, which means they're by nature emotional, they're not something you use your mind to create, you have them. But in this chapter, we said you got to use your mind to access them, to feel them. If you don't need to feel them, you just sort of want to know you have them, okay, you don't need that much mental effort. But if you really want to feel them in a real way, you need to invest a lot of your mind. So these loves are, in a sense, fashioned by intellect, and therefore the love goes to this 3rd world, like 1, 2, 3, or 2nd if you're counting from the top, the 2nd highest world, the world of Bria, the world of intellect, and anything you do because of the love, all service of God, also ascends this high. So that's amazing. That was what we discussed last. Now we're at the final point. And the final point is, well, 2 points that are sort of going to connect to each other. When we're looking at these loves, really flowing directly from what we said last week, these loves are amazing because these loves are like a synergy. They combine 2 different, very special elements. And they do both. We've learned in Tanya that there's love you create by your mind, and there's love that's natural, emotional love. And the love that you create by your mind has an advantage, because since you create it by your own mind and your own efforts, and it's intellectually produced, it goes up to that 3rd world, or 2nd from the top, that world of Bria, so much higher than where just a regular emotional love is going to go. So that's an advantage to an intellectually produced love, as versus one that's natural and innate and emotional. And then, of course, we also learned in Tanya that, well, if you have a love that's natural and innate, that means like God made it. It's very, very powerful. Obviously, anything made by God is going to be more powerful than anything made by man. So a natural love has tremendous power, much more than any love we could ever create. So like, they both have an advantage. When you use your mind and create, wow, it has the advantage of intellect. It's going to go to the world of Bria. It's going to ascend to the world of intellect. That's so high. Wow, you're accessing the natural love. This is such a powerful love. It's made by God. Wow, that's amazing. Guess what the Rebbe says? These loves, the loves we're discussing in this chapter, they have both advantages because they're natural loves. They're made by God, so to speak. They're embedded in your soul. And, as we just explained extensively last week, you're using your mind to access them. I mean, you can sort of get away not using so much of your mind, but not to really feel the love. To really feel the love, as the Rebbe said, and as we discussed, and as I felt was incredibly practical. We have to fixate ourselves, we have to think about it and talk about it and act as if and fixate and talk about it and think about it and act as if, which we said is a way to acquire anything we want to acquire. And here we're using this intellectual focus to really acquire the love to feel it. So these loves are a synergy. They have both advantages. They have the advantage of the investment of your mind and the advantage of being created by God. The advantage of an innate love and the advantage of a man-made love. So this is amazing. We're going to read that and we're going to say, and we're going to go on. So let's first read that and then we'll get to that. V'lo od, not only that. Ella, shebeis b'chinas avos elo hanal, these 2 above mentioned love, loving God as your life, loving God as your father. Hen kululos, min b'chinas ava rabba, v'gedoyla m'ula mitachilur chimasechliim, asher ha'ava they're comprised, in a sense, like the love that we called Ava Rabba. Last chapter, we discussed a love called Avas Olam, and we discussed a love called Ava Rabba. And the difference was that Avas Olam is a love we make using our mind, and Ava Rabba, which is really the love we attribute to a tzaddik, to a very, very, very godly person who's so spiritual and so connected to God that God gifts him with a love. So that's a little different than what we're saying here. Because we learned in chapters 18 through 25 about one level of what we called ahava misuteres, the innate natural love. And now in chapter 44, we learned about two more innate natural loves. So we have a total of 3 innate natural loves. So they're gifts from God, wired into our soul, but we all have them. You have a soul, you have this love, which is very practical in terms of yourself. Do I really love God? I have a soul. I'm a Jew. I love God. All of these 3 loves, the 18 to 25 love and the 2 of chapter 44, they're all innate, wired in my soul gifts. Additionally, one could get a different type of love that's a gift, which is when one is a very, very, very holy person, as we call it, tzaddik, such a holy, godly, perfectly transparent to God person that God gifts him with a love like akin to what the souls feel in the world to come. And that love we learned of last chapter, and it's called Ava Rabbah. So the Rebbe says, these loves, in a sense, are like that Ava Rabbah, in a sense meaning they're gifts, as Ava Rabbah is a gift. Now, Ava Rabbah is such a high love. We were talking before about where does your love go? When we said, well, generally a natural love will go to sort of this emotional space, the lowest 2 worlds, Asiya or Yetzira, and then woe when you're creating your own with your intellect, or when you're using your intellect to really access these 2 loves, it goes to the 3rd world, second from the top, the world of Bria. And then there's the highest world, the world of Atzilus. Ava Rabbah, that type of love, that love of the tzaddik, that love that God gives him as a gift because he's so nullified and transparent to God, that love gets to Atzilus. That love gets to the highest domain. So in a sense, our love is like that Ava Rabbah, which means perhaps, our love can also ascend to the highest world, to Atzilus. Atzilus from the word Eitzel, next to God, or from the etymology ne'etzal, that just naturally evolves from God. So our loves, the Rebbe says, in a sense are like the Ava Rabbah we learned last chapter. That was not us, that was for the greatest of great spiritually, the tzaddik, that goes all the way to the world of Atzilus, but it's a gift from God, and my loves are gifts from God. So my loves could also, if I really acquire them, reach the world of Atzilus. And in a sense, it's like the other love we learned last chapter, what we called Avas Olam, love coming from world, love coming from a contemplation of world, love coming from a contemplation of God, who's the source of the world, man-made, created by my mind love. Because this love, well, it's not created by my mind, but I'm using my mind, that's the only way I'm really feeling it. And that love, Avas Olam, accesses the world of Bria, the world of intellect. And my loves, as we explained at length last week, access the world of Bria. So my loves are sort of like the Ava Rabbah that goes even higher to Atzilus, because it's a gift of God to the tzaddik, and definitely like, in a sense, the Avas Olam, because mine is using my mind, and that one's using mine, which goes to Bria. So it sort of has a foot in both doors. As we're saying, it has both advantages. Rak only, she'afal pichei, nevertheless, tzarich l'tzroyach b'sichla l'hasil gan lochinas Avas Olam hanal. But you know what? Even though I'm teaching you now, so to speak, the Alter Rebbe is saying, 2 loves that seemingly are better than Avas Olam, you still have to work on Avas Olam. So let me say in my own words what the Rebbe is saying, just in case it wasn't totally clear. Last chapter, chapter 43, we discussed 2 loves. We also discussed in the beginning 2 fears, but now we're talking about the love. We discussed the love man makes by his own efforts, using his mind to contemplate God beyond world and creator of world and source of world. Avas Olam, love coming from thinking of God as a source of world. And then we spoke about a love way beyond that, Ava Rabbah, the love that God gives to the most holy, transparent to him, nullified to him, tzaddikim. Now in this chapter, we learned about 2 other loves, both of whom, unlike the 2 loves of last chapter, we're all born with. I'm not born with Avas Olam, I'm not born with Ava Rabbah. Avas Olam, no one's born with. You use your mind to create it. Ava Rabbah, no one's born with. The tzaddik, the holiest Jews, receive it as a gift from God because of their effort. This chapter, we learned about 2 loves that I'm born with. You are born with. They're wired in our soul. And we learn, sort of like the advantage of Avas Olam, man-made love, I have to use my mind, so this ascends to the world of mind, of thought, of intellect, of Bria. And like Ava Rabbah, they're in essence gifts from God. So perhaps if I really access them, I could actually get to Atzilus with them. So the Rebbe says, you know what? You might think. So why bother with the love of last chapter? Why waste my time? Why work on that when this is so much more powerful? Avas Olam, man-made created love of my mind, gets me to the world of Bria. But guess what? So do these loves. And these loves have the potential even to get to Atzilus, the highest world, like Ava Rabbah, the gift of God to the tzaddik gets to Atzilus. These loves the Rebbe is implying also could do that. They're also gifts of God. Or to put it in different words, the loves of this chapter have both advantages. They have the advantage of being God-made. They have the advantage of utilizing my mind. Last chapter, well, Avarabba is a gift of God to the tzaddik, so we're not thinking about that one. But Avas Olam is very good, made by man, but it does have the advantage of being made by God. So again, last chapter, Avas Olam, man-made, using my mind, contemplating God beyond world and creator of world and higher than world. Man-made love, advantage, use my mind, use my sweat, reaches the world of intellect. Amazing. But this chapter, I have two loves that are gifts of God. I have loving God as he is my life and loving God as he is my father. Those are the two loves of this world. We don't have a specific little neat title for them, but those are how we refer to these loves. Loving God as my life, and even more powerful as we learned in this chapter, loving God as my father. Loving God as my life and loving God as my father has all the advantage of Avas Olam. I'm using my mind to really feel it, and has almost like the advantage of Avarabba. It's a gift from God. So why would I bother working on Avas Olam, purely man-made, no God aid here at all, when in these loves I have its advantage plus another one? I could do what you can do, and I could do something better, So why am I doing just what you can do when in this chapter I'm incorporating all the advantage I said Avas Olam has, plus all the advantage, so to speak, in the sense of Avarabba, the advantage of a gift from God. So why bother with that? What I mean, maybe it was a stepping stone. I needed to learn chapter 43 to get to 44. But now that I'm at 44, why bother with the work of 43? So the Rebbe is saying, no. You're trying to be an American and efficient and effective and time management. Why bother with that love? No, that love I want you to do. And of course, I want you to do these very, very special loves of this chapter. Any thoughts why, before we read the Rebbe's answer? Any thoughts on your own? Why would the Rebbe want us to use our mind and work really hard to create a love of God, man-made, chapter 43, thinking of God beyond world, source of world, higher than world, when I'm getting those advantages in the two loves of this chapter anyway? Any ideas why? What would be the advantage of doing that one also? Not instead of, also.
Maybe people not always connect with their emotions, and it's hard for them to recognize the natural love. So that's why we need to work on intellectual love.
Oh, that's an interesting thought. It's not the direction the Rebbe goes, but I get what you're saying. Like maybe the two loves of the chapter are very emotional. They are. Feeling God as your life, feeling God as your father. And last chapter was really, like, it was a much more intellectual process. You're right, it was. Recognizing God as a source of the worlds, beyond world, higher than world, the greatness, the infinity. And that was a much more intellectual road.
Right. And some people more intellectual. For some people, it's more natural.
It's not the way the Rebbe goes, but it's actually, I think it's a very, very solid answer. I get it. I think that makes a lot of sense. So what the Rebbe says, what the Rebbe's going to tell us is, he didn't go in Chava's direction, but I think that was a great answer. What the Rebbe says is, even though the loves of this chapter are higher, which they are, both they have the advantage of intellect, and they're created by God, and they could even access Atzilus, the highest world, because like that gift, but they don't have a certain quality that you gained from Avas Olam. In Avas Olam, you gained feeling a thirst for God. You felt like, wow, God's the creator. He's so beyond. I want him so much. And he's so beyond all of creation. He's infinite. That was the thrust, which, as Chava said, and she had a very good point, is something one could really just conceptualize intellectually. You're not starting off by saying, I feel you. The whole point is, in a sense, you don't feel. And you really end up with a love that's a thirst, that's a longing, that's a desire. The two loves of our chapter, loving God as your life, loving God as your father, what you feel is the closeness, right? Your life, your father. So it's not the thirst element, it's the closeness element. And of course, there's reason and space for both. But the Rebbe's point is, however far you go with these two loves, if you just do them as the Rebbe scripted them in the Tanya, there are ways to tweak them a bit. We'll discuss that. But if you just do them as the Rebbe says in the Tanya, you're feeling so close and so loving to God, and you feel him, you have him. And with the love of last chapter, the end of the day, you went the road, you thought the thoughts, you feel the love. Even if it's hard for you, if you're an intellectual person, but in the end you feel it. That's what happens. What you feel is thirst. You want, but not that you have. God's way beyond, not anything you have. So the Rebbe said there's an advantage to feeling thirsty. Why do you think there's an advantage to feeling thirsty? Why would the Rebbe want us to feel thirsty and not feel quenched? With these loves, we feel quenched. God is my Father. I feel so close. I feel so embraced. I feel quenched. With Avos Olam, God, you're so beyond. I don't feel quenched with my love. I feel thirsty. I feel parched. It's a love, as the Rebbe says very often in Tanya, that's like a fire, not like a love. Love is supposed to be like water. It's supposed to flow down. It's supposed to be peaceful. It's supposed to be close. But a lot of times in Tanya, we don't speak about love like that. We do something very unusual in Tanya. We speak about love like fire. Now, fire is not the motif of love. Fire is retreating from you. Fire goes away from you. Fire goes up. But there's a fiery love, which we just say it so many times in Tanya, it sounds natural, but it's really not at all the nature of love to be fire. But this is what we mean, this fiery love, this love that's a thirst. Why do you think the Alter Rebbe will want us to have this, I'm going to use the word, a natural, not normative for love that's a thirst? What's the advantage in thirsting?
You want more.
You want more. That's exactly it. When you thirst for God, you want God more. Exactly. It's a very critical point of Tanya that I don't know if we ever analyze, but is like flowing throughout Tanya. We always talk about love as fire. You ever stop and think, love is fire? That's not love. Fire is gvura. Fire is going away. Love is water. Love is coming down. Love is beautiful and calm and nurturing. That's not fire. And most loves are like that. And loves in Tanya are like that also, like the two we're learning in this chapter. But last love, as we very often speak of in Tanya, when you're creating the love by thinking of God's greatness and vastness and distance, it's a love that's a thirst. And like Bracha said, exactly, when you're thirsty, you want more. That's the cycle. Like, I think of God, and I think of his power, I think of his greatness, I think of him as creator, and I'm thirsty, I want him. And then I'm like, I want him, but how do I get him? Serve. That's the only way. In Hasidic Kabbalistic language, we call it the movement of Ratzu Vishuv. Ratzu is racing toward God. Like you want God, you want God, you want God, and then you're like, crash, how do I get God? Shuv. Come back down and do a mitzvah. Come back down and serve. Come back down and study Torah. You're racing, you're not getting anywhere. Because God is infinite and you're finite. God's creator, your creation. You can never span the gap between God and you. So the more you want, but God gave me a way. I could do a mitzvah. And when I do a mitzvah, God and I are one. I could learn Torah. When we learn Torah, God and I are even more one. So when I have this thirst for God, I want him more. And therefore, I'm compelled, I'm inspired. I feel the need to be close. I feel the need to learn. I feel the need to serve. And then, of course, in the ultimately healthy cycle, as Tanya would envision it, so you're racing to God. That means you have to come back down, planet Earth, serve. And then the more you serve, the more this elicits your relationship with God, which means you want him even more. And then you're like, I gotta serve more. And then as I serve, I want him even more. And then I gotta serve more. So it's a spiral. It's an upward spiral. It's sort of like the same reason why how God wired us. You want to get close to God, you think, okay, let me do something for him. Either or sometimes we think, let me add. I'm saying this number of chapters of Psalms, let me say another one. Or I'm learning this number of things, let me learn more. Or I'm helping, let me add. I'm doing something good, let me add. Or you think, Well, I never did that one yet, or I don't do it so well. I could do it better. Or I'm going to light the candles early. I'm going to make sure I give charity before I light the candles. I'm going to pray after I light the candles. I'm going to make sure my table is set before I light the candles. I'm going to make sure I'm dressed for the Shabbos when I light the candles. There's always ways to like upgrade. Or maybe there's a commandment I never did. I thought it was too hard. I thought it was so difficult. I thought it was past my pay grade. And I'm going to say, you know what, God, I want you so much. I'm doing that. So whatever the situation, if you're adding something good you're doing, if you're improving what you're doing, if you're taking on something you never did yet, a lot of times we feel like a wow, a thrill, a high. It's like, whoa, you feel so good and so close and it's so amazing. And it like revitalizes your whole relationship to God, and everything else that you're doing feels more real because you just feel so close to Him, because you're so awake and alive in your relationship because you stretched and added. And then it might be on the third time, it might be on the third week, it might be on the third month, depending on you, depending on the thing. But at a certain point, it doesn't give you the thrill anymore. It became you. So you have the advantage that you integrated it, that it's you, that it's real, that it's solid, but you don't have that like wow anymore. God did that deliberately because you reach a point where you say, gotta give Him more. If I want to feel like that, if I want to feel awake and alive and inspired and excited, it just means I gotta stretch. So God built into the system, the cycle of our relationship to Him, this need to always increase, to always extend more, because in essence of our thirst. So thirst is very valuable. And the Rebbe is saying, the loves of this chapter, they're wonderful, they're powerful, they're bria, they're atzilus, but they're not thirst. And the love of last chapter is a thirst. God is so high, He's so far, I want Him so much. I'm thirsty. And that's the advantage of that love. Haba'a, so he said, I'm just go back to make it make sense. Nevertheless, one has to work with one's mind. Also to attain the love we discussed last chapter, the Avas Olam, the intellectually created love of God being so high and beyond. That comes from intellect, from your knowledge and understanding of the greatness of God. Kidei, in order, lahagdil meduras eish, to intensify that passion, the fire, ha'ava berishve eish, a love that we call the flames of fire. V'shal heves ava, this burning, strong, intense flame. V'lahav ha'ola shamayma, like a flickering, flaming love that's going up to the heavens. At shamayim rabim lo yichulu chabas v'chuli, such a love that, quoting the verse, all of the heavens can't extinguish this love. It's so powerful. The Rebbe, as you noticed, used many words here to seemingly say the same thing. The Rebbe is not wasting words, but he wants to really get you to understand the intensity of the fire, burning, parched, longing, yearning, thirsting. He wants you to feel its power. The rivers can't drown her out. Because there's an advantage to a love that's a fire. Love is water. Love comes down to you. Love is nourishing. True, most are. This is an unusual love. It's a love of fire. It's a love that's a thirst, and that's a very powerful tool to love God with a thirst for Him. No matter how close you are, no matter how much you know, to be thirsty. We can always be thirsty for God. So this love, how am I so thirsty? Because the focus of His love, as we said, is very different than the focus of the other two loves. The two loves of chapter 44 were loves of closeness, my life, my Father. That love was the greatness of the infinity. Wow, big, out there, powerful, source of all, creator, very far from me. There's an advantage of focusing on God as very far and creating a love from that. A lot of times if you focus on God as very far, you feel fear, you feel awe, He's so powerful. So here it's like a very nuanced thought that you're thinking of God as very far and very good. If we just think of God as very far, up there, higher than the highest heaven, 7 heavens away, whatever you're thinking of it, however you picture it, and so powerful and so far, that doesn't create love at all. That creates fear. It doesn't create love. But if you think of God as so far and so good, like we're thinking in this love, Avas Oilam. I'm thinking of God as the creator of life, the creator of all. He's so big, he's so vast, and he's nurturing every element in our world. So he's so good, he's so loving, and he's so removed from me. That's what creates the love, the thirst, the wanting him. And that, the Rebbe says, had an advantage over the two loves of this chapter. Kasher Einan, Kirishve Eish Chule, that these loves are not fire, they're normal loves, they're water. Ki Yisron Umailas Hazahav ala Kesef Chule, Kmoshe Kasav Lakaman. These loves are compared, so to speak, to silver, and the love of last chapter is compared to gold, which is sort of weird because we said at length in the beginning of this class that the loves of this chapter have a big advantage over Avas Olam. They're a higher quality. They're made by God, not made by man. They're God's gift. They can access even Atzilus. So we're like, that's gold and this is silver? So obviously it doesn't mean in a value way. And of course you could have more silver and less gold, so you might have more value in your silver than you have in your gold. So it doesn't mean value. It doesn't mean how much is it worth. And we know technically the love of this chapter is worth more than the love of last chapter. So what do you think the Rebbe is trying to bring out by calling last chapter gold? What do you think the Rebbe is implying? What about gold versus silver is the Rebbe saying that he would call last chapter gold and this chapter silver?
I would think that gold is more precious, more difficult to find. That's why it's so much more expensive. But to be honest, this chapter is kind of heavy. I'm not completely understanding it, but trying to listen.
We all try. We all take what we can and see how we can apply it, and that's fine. We're going to get to things that are going to be a little easier to assimilate in 2 chapters, starting with chapter 46. But what do you mean about gold? Because I said, don't think, what do you mean? What's the advantage of gold over silver? Don't think of dollars, because I said you could have less gold and more silver. So what do we mean about it?
Well, it's more precious. It's more difficult
to
more
find.
Precious.
It's more, yeah. That's why it's more rare. It's more precious. Okay. So that precious quality, if we translate that you're putting in front of a woman gold or silver, for most women, obviously, some people are different, but for most women, what would be the difference between their relationship to gold and their relationship to silver? You're a woman. You have 2 pieces of jewelry in front of you. One's gold and one's silver. What happens?
Well, it's brighter, maybe shinier. I would reach for the gold. I would definitely reach for the gold. Yeah.
You would reach for the gold. I think most of us would reach for the gold. There's just some attraction we have. Rachel, what were you going to add? Were you going to add something?
I thought maybe gold doesn't change. Maybe silver does.
Wow. That's a really strong point.
Gold is more steady.
Silver does. Which shows you that the's a certain quality. That's really, I like that. That's really powerful. That gold has a power that silver doesn't. As Rachel is saying, gold doesn't tarnish. Silver will tarnish. Even your silver jewelry will tarnish, but gold won't. And there's a power to it. There's some power it has, which puts on us some pull, if you want to use attraction, some draw. There's something about gold. Rachel said she would go for the gold. Why? It's gold. So it's not the color. You can get white gold. It's just, there's some pull there. And Rachel is saying something very interesting of its strength. It's she's using the word stability, that it doesn't tarnish, it doesn't change. That's what the Rebbe is implying about this love. And again, it's a very careful thought to understand, because the Rebbe does not mean, oh, well, gold is more valuable than silver. No, because we just said a few lines ago that the loves of this chapter are more valuable than the love of last chapter. So that is true. Gold is more valuable than silver, and that's not what we mean. But we mean this other element of gold, that there's just something about gold that attracts you in a way silver doesn't. If you prefer silver, that's fine. I'm just saying, for most people out there, there's something about gold that attracts you. There's some draw. And the Rebbe is saying that's this love. This love is drawing you to God in a more stronger way. I like what Rachel brought out, that idea of it's not tarnishing. It's there's It's going to keep it up. It's not going to lose it. There's a power to it. And that's what the Rebbe is saying. Valuable? The loves here are more valuable. Definitely go for these loves. But last chapter, it's gold-like. There's a certain something it has because of the thirst factor that we discussed and why we would want to thirst, that just draws you to God in a very strong way. So Rachel said she finds this chapter like heavy or maybe harder for her to relate to than some other chapters, and I appreciated hearing that. And I think, as I said to her, we always want to look at everything, and some things are so naturally relevant and applicable, and some things seem like way beyond us. And oh my gosh, I'm talking about these two high levels of love of God, and where am I holding it? So just you learn it and you think, well, what do I take from this? Why did I come to this class? Maybe just to be inspired to focus and know that I love God this way, that both of the loves of this chapter are embedded in my soul, and I could really demand for myself to love God because I'm a Jew and it's wired in my psyche. To look and think of these ideas, even like if I can relate to God as my life, or I can relate to God as my father, whichever draws me more, to focus on that point and to really take a few minutes to think of how much you love your parents and how much you have done for your parents, and then think, and not God? And God's not my parent too? And God's not my parent? He's my parent. What's a parent? He's my parent. How much I love my parent, how much I naturally love God. The concept of really focusing whatever you want to acquire, just keep on thinking as if and talking as if and thinking as if and talking as if. And whatever you want to be, that's how you get there. I thought that was very applicable. And what we're discussing now, thirst. Do I feel content in my relationship? Am I satisfied in my connection to God? How can I amp up my thirst for him? And do I want to feel thirsty? And why it's so good to feel thirsty? And then what would be my road to feeling thirsty? I was just trying to throw out some ideas of this chapter, and you could sort of process and see how it relates to you, because obviously on some level it really does. So let's finish the chapter now. V'gam, and also. Again, our question was, why should I bother? None of us want to work extra, unnecessary. Why should I bother doing the love of last chapter when I'm accomplishing the same and more with the loves of this chapter? So we just spent a long time on the main answer, because that love creates thirst, and there's a big advantage to being thirsty. And now we also have an additional answer. I'm going to throw in another one. Additionally, ki zeh kol ha'adam. This is the whole man. V'tachliso. This is man's purpose. Now, the Rebbe here is going to give you our purpose. So perk up your ears. What is the Rebbe saying is the purpose of man? Leman das es kvod havaya. To know the honor of God. V'yakar tiferes gedulaso. To know the beauty, the preciousness of the beauty of his greatness. Ish kasher yuchal sa'es. Each person, as much as he's capable of, as much as he can carry, as much as he can bear, as much as he can tolerate with his mind to understand the beauty, the glory, the preciousness of God. As it's written in Rai Mehemna, section of Zohar. Begin in order to ishtamudaun, that we will know and recognize the greatness of God. Lay, him, v'chule, kunoida, etc., as is known. So the Rebbe is saying there's something else you're gaining by working on the love of last chapter. You know what you're gaining? You're gaining fulfilling your purpose. In case you want to know what your purpose is. You know why you're in this world? To know God, to recognize God, to know the beauty, to know the greatness, to get God. And when you use your mind, doing the work of last chapter, to create this relationship, you're really focusing on his greatness. We said that was the road, on God's greatness and his goodness, his greatness and his love for you. The Rebbe said, yeah, it's more work. I just want enough love to be an amazing Jew, and I'm getting it with the loves of this chapter. True, the Rebbe says. But guess what? When you do the work of last chapter, you're focusing on his greatness. And that's why you're in this world. So it's really interesting. I was thinking a lot when I was reviewing this, because there are other things we have learned that is the reason for our being. It's always, to me, very cool when the Rebbe writes, and this is the reason why you're in this world, because who doesn't want to know why they're in this world, right? Most existential question. And guess what? We know. So the Rebbe is saying here, you're in this world to know God, which is wonderful for everyone in this class, because in this class, we learn Chassidus. And as you learn Chassidus, you know the greatness of God. So we are really in such a powerful way, the Rebbe says, are fulfilling the purpose of our existence. In Tanya, later, but I think in chapter 26, I brought it in. That was chapter 26 a long time ago. Now we're concluding chapter 44. In section 11 of the fourth book of Tanya, within the work Tanya, there are really 5 works. We're working on the first one, the main one. The fourth one is a collection of writings, letters of the Alter Rebbe. And in the 11th letter, the Rebbe focuses on the concept of knowing and appreciating that everything we receive is good. It's all God and it's all good. And when we struggle with feeling unhappy with things in our life, we feel like we don't have enough, or it's not good enough, or it's not good, or it's bad. The Rebbe says we have to know everything is God. And if it's God, it's all coming from his goodness, so everything is good. And the Rebbe says, and this is the purpose of man. This is the existential reason for our existence. This is why we're in this world. To be tested. Not that any of us want to be tested, but to be tested, to be challenged, to look at things and say, I'm not going to fail. I know it's God. I know it's good. We don't want tests. I'm going to say that again. God, I hope you're hearing. We do not want tests. But there is some existential reason that I'm sure we all fulfilled a long time ago to be in this world, see things and say, God, I'm not fooled. I know it's you and I know it's good. So it's interesting because both of these, the Rebbe says in Tanya, are literally, he uses the exact same expression, the purpose of our existence. Of course, very much so we bring out in Tanya, and of course the Rebbe very much emphasizes the purpose of our existence is to bring Mashiach, right? It's the whole, as the Rebbe explains in Tanya in chapter 36, the whole purpose of creation is for Mashiach, and definitely we are here to be those players or to be God's partners, to be his building team, to make this world his home. So we have this essence purpose of knowing God, which we achieve through learning Chassidus for sure. We have this essence purpose of being challenged and seeing it's all God and it's all good, which we have all achieved already and don't need to do it anymore. And we have this essence job. We're here. Our whole generation came back. We, as a generation, have been here, besides all of our personal journeys, but generationally, this is our fourth lifetime. We were all here by the Tower of Babel. We all came back to be the generation of Egypt to rectify what we messed up by the Tower of Babel. And we brought redemption then. We all came back to be the generation of Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, right after the destruction of the Second Temple, to be the generation that absorbed the inner dimension of Torah, which is another type of Mashiach, another type of redemption. And being the generation that knows how to do it, we were all brought back again now to be the generation that brings redemption. So this is definitely an existential reason why we're here, is to bring redemption, as well as recognizing it's all God, it's all good, which we've done, as well as studying Chassidus, developing our love, and just really immersing ourselves in knowing the greatness of God. And that is the chapter. So we finished chapter 44.